So I'm guessing that my household is not the only household that is filled with probably fairly constant scratching of the head about what the heck is going on in this country right now. Just like how do we make sense of this? And so we keep having these conversations in my household that go something like, what the hell? And what's next? And you can't even make this shit up. Right? And we are like, what? So one of the things that I realized this week is like, how did it take me this long, though, to realize that there is some spiritual lesson we're supposed to be learning from this? Like, what? Like, if this isn't some spiritual kick in the pants, I don't know what is. And so I started to think about what was happening from a spiritual point of view. And I kept coming back to a story that we all are familiar with. Some of us know it from Hans Christian Andersen, but we might not know that it's actually an ancient Sufi story. And that this is a story about the emperor not having any clothes on. And why I keep coming back to this is that I believe that it has something specific to do with what's happening on the surface level of things, on the political level of things. But it also has something to do with what happens when there are fears inside of us that don't go confronted. When there are things in our lives where we're not willing to look at them clearly. So the story is, right, that two weavers promise the emperor a new set of clothes and tell him that it will be invisible to those who are unfit for their positions, stupid or incompetent. But well, in reality, they didn't make him any clothes at all. And so he's walking around the emperor, and no one will tell him he is not wearing any clothes because they do not want to be seen as stupid or unfit. They won't tell him. They will not acknowledge this. And the story goes on that it isn't until a small child screams out, but he isn't wearing any clothes at all, that the spell is broken. And so I started to think about this from that spiritual level, right? Like, so obviously this is happening in our country. There are aspects in which people are operating out of that which is untrue, and in fear of whatever, are unwilling to call it forward. But there are also a lot of levels in a spiritual way, and ways, in fact, in which new thought has been taught over time, that is what we've been told to do, right? Fake it till you make it. Lie about what's really going on. Say something else is going on entirely, and if you say it enough times, then it will be true. This is a school of thought. This is, in fact, where, in fact, some of what Trump's philosophy comes from. He, in fact, was taught by someone who's considered a New Thought leader. His name is Norman Vincent Peale. And although he was a Christian teacher, he was in the New Thought vein. And the idea that he picked up very, very well is this idea that if you just lie loud enough and long enough, it somehow becomes true. And this is a misteaching of New Thought, but one that is still very prevalent. Because what it mistakes is this idea, or what it forgets is that we have to first understand the truth before we can change things. We don't just get to decide what the truth is and then speak from there. We get to first understand what the truth is and then be able to shift things. So the way that is said sometimes is that we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. And until we really understand that we're not really experiencing reality, we have to be willing to step back and look at how we are experiencing it, because we are experiencing it as an expression of us. And what we do as human beings, which is very, very natural, is that we gather people around us that will support and confirm our version of reality. These are the people we call our friends. These are the people we call our community. But what we don't realize is that actually confronting and being willing to call forward the things that are untrue in our lives is an important and powerful spiritual practice. And that we have to be willing to encounter those untruths in more powerful ways if we are going to truly transform. We have to be willing to have some little kid scream at us that there really is no clothes at all. We have to have that in our lives in order to really be in this transformational process in a real way. Because it does not actually work to transform by lying. It doesn't work. It doesn't work to not actually engage with what is. That is not how this spiritual power that we're tapping into works. And so this idea then that first we have to encounter what is true more powerfully, and to look at all the places where we have been unwilling to look at that. So some of the ways we talk about that in one of the idioms is about our sacred cows. Like, what in your life is a sacred cow? What is in your life is something that you are unwilling to question the way you have experienced it? What is it? Where in your life have you sectioned off places and not been willing to look at it? And even in really kind of silly ways. And so I had an experience of this yesterday, just watching people Christmas shop. And so I don't know if you've ever done this, so I'm not Christmas shopping yet. I'm probably going to regret that soon. But I was in the process of just watching people. And it was interesting to watch people pick up things that no one needs, no one wants, are god-awful ugly. And decide that this is the perfect thing for so-and-so. And they are going to hand it to them, and just not questioning whether it was something that anyone needed or wanted, right? Or it was just this idea that it needed to happen. And I started to look at, I've been looking at the places in my life where I've bought into that, thinking it just is what needs to happen instead of, does this really need to happen? Or does it need to look like this? Or do I want it to look like this? Should it feel this way? And there are all kinds of places in our lives where if unchecked, we just fall back into these patterns of not questioning and having our sacred cows and having our fears guide us and having just our automatic, what we think society thinks should happen, just overtake us. And there is a great need, I believe, to bring some clearer sight to some of these places where we have been unwilling to question whether it's real or true, whether it has a place in our lives, whether it needs to be there. And if we aren't clear about it, it makes sense that it's showing up all over around us, right? So that we can get clear about how we're relating to some of these things that we obviously need to change. And so I've been thinking about it from that perspective, and I came across this old story that'll make some of you scratch your head, because if you're like me, I had to go look up what a slide rule was, but I have seen them before. But the story is about the older times at General Motors. General Motors. I have no idea where that came from. Great. So there was a research head at General Motors who wanted a problem solved, and anytime he wanted a problem solved, what he would do was place a table outside of the meeting room and with a sign that said, "Leave your slide rules here." And he said to his engineers that if he didn't do that, every time some new idea would come up, he'd find someone reaching for their slide rule, and they would be on their feet immediately saying, "Boss, you can't do it. I'm going to show you why." And that energy, right, that energy in the process of new things coming into being is often that which stops that progression or that transformation or the real new ideas. Because we get stopped at, well, you just can't do it, or that's how it's always been, or I haven't been willing to question how I'm relating to this. It is my sacred cow. It is my fear that I am unwilling to look at clearly. And I believe that until we are willing to actually look at those things clearly, leave our slide rules at the door, leave our assumption that it's just the way it is at the door, that we will continue to repeat these things in which we don't get out of what has been and truly transform things. And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling like what's happening on the outside is a really clear kick in the pants, that if something doesn't happen on the inside, that we're in for a real big mess. Like, if we don't really take on this on a deep level, that there's, I don't know. Yeah, the conversations in our house. There's places we're going that I don't think any of us want to go. So the willingness then to be willing to drop the illusion, right? To step out and to really declare, hey, the emperor has no clothes. That way in which I've been relating to the world has no power over me. The way that I have determined that things need to happen isn't the way that things need to happen. That in fact, there are other forces at work that if I'm willing, can take over and move us to a place that is beyond what we've experienced before. But we have to be willing to look clearly at the places that we have held out of bounds. Because we didn't want to look foolish. Because we didn't want to look like we didn't know what we were doing. Because we got really committed to that point of view. And this is the beauty of those children, right? Like the energy in the story is the children energy, that innocence that's willing to, in the midst of all of it, call it out. So I have this funny story. I don't know if it's going to be funny to you, but I think it's funny. So I have this great part-time teaching gig really early in the mornings where I get to be with students in China who know no English. And most of my students are 3 and 4 years old, and that is such a great age. Other people teach much older students, but mine are really young because they love how goofy I am. And if you don't know I'm goofy, I am really goofy. Chicken sounds at 4 in the morning come from my living room constantly, and the kids love it. So I had this one student that I've had. He is very, very little, little English. So, some of the kids know their colors and their numbers and their ABCs, and this kid knows nothing. He knows okay. That was the one word he knew when I started to teach him. And so we're in the middle of class recently, and I think it's his 4th or 5th class of English in the whole time. But there was one week where he missed having me as a teacher. And he missed me because I was traveling to be with my husband's family, and I just didn't happen to teach that day. That was his regular day. So his parents chose another teacher. And so I'm in the middle of teaching him, and all of a sudden, this little voice, he goes, "Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!" And I just fell out of my chair. So his teacher, while I was gone, taught him, "Oh my God!" And what was so impactful for me was that clear reflection, right? That clear reflection that this child had heard, "Oh my God!" and had turned it into somehow like a mantra for himself. And I'm not sure he knew what he was saying, but it was so perfect as like, what did I get stuck on? Right? Like, what did I learn? And what did I get stuck on? Like, and what needs to be transformed? And it was so sweet and so innocent and so beautiful that I started saying it back to him. And thank God he stopped, because it was, "Oh my God," everything. Like, the color is pink. "Oh my God." It's an alligator. "Oh my God." So I came across this beautiful poem that speaks to me about this, about like the power of what we get stuck on and how do we want to give our attention to things and to make sure they're true and real. So this is, again, the poet that I just came across about a month ago. Her name is Jean Lohman. And she wrote this poem, and it's entitled Invocation. And so this is what she said. Let us try what it is to be true. Let us try what it is to be true to gravity, to grace, to the given, faithful to our voices, to lines making the map of our furrowed tongue, turned toward the root of a single word, refusing solemnity and slogans. Let us honor what hides and does not come easy to speech. The pebbles we hold in our mouths help us to practice song, and we sing to the sea. May the things of this world be preserved to us, their beautiful, secret vocabularies. We are dreaming it over and new, the language of our tribe. Music we hear, we can only acknowledge. May the naming powers be granted. Our words are feathers that fly on our breath. Let them go in a holy direction. Letting our words go in a holy direction. So I believe we can only do that if we are telling the truth. If we are telling the truth, and the truth matters. And when we are willing to encounter the truth, we get in touch with reality, and then we are able to change reality. But we have to be operating in truth from the beginning. We have to be willing to look at how we're relating to the world, how the world is working, and we have to be willing to dismantle the ways in which we are separating ourselves from it. And this is work. This is work. It is so much easier just to flit along the surface, faking it. It is. But none of us would be in this room or watching online if we weren't willing, if we could just flit along the surface. There's easier ways. Certainly not as satisfying, certainly not as transformational, and certainly not the ones that our souls are calling for, but there are easier ways. And the truth of it is that none of our souls would be satisfied with anything else. So we have to figure out how to invoke that holy direction in our experience, so that we do not consistently get caught up in the trap of not being willing to look at where in our life we determine that the emperor is wearing clothes, and are unwilling to question whether they are or not. Where in our life our fear or our idea of what we think is happening has gotten in the way of us realizing what's real and true. And so, I don't know, I'm willing to take the spiritual path in this, because the other path right now is just confusing and doesn't make any sense, right? But it does also require us to confront some of the foundational ways in which some of this philosophy has been taught to us. Because just continuing to say that things are other than they are does not actually change things unless we are willing to be different in the first place. Unless we are willing to be the change first. Until we are willing to really understand what needs to change. And so as we practice this together, I just recognize that there's opportunities for us to get clear about what's real and what's going on. And I'm going to end with this parable from Anthony DeMello, who's an excommunicated Jesuit priest. And he has these short pieces that he wrote that are often a communication between a master and a student. And they're very simple, but also very deep. And so this is the one that caught me when I was preparing for today. So this is a student asking his teacher a question. What is the greatest enemy of enlightenment? And the teacher says, fear. And the student says, well, where does fear come from? And the teacher says, delusion. And so the student says, well, what is delusion? And the master says, to think that the flowers around you are poisonous snakes. So how do I attain enlightenment, teacher? Open your eyes and see. Well, what, said the student. What is there to see? And the teacher says that there isn't a single snake around. This is how we get free. So we were willing to look at the places where we have mistaken flowers for poisonous snakes, have gotten scared to look at what's there, to actually look and therefore disarm and therefore be able to transform. This is the true power of New Thought. Not the fake it, rah, everything is good, but actually being willing to look at what is, understanding the dynamics of that so that we may change it. And this is what we're about. This is what we're doing now here on this planet. So might as well get busy, right? Might as well do it willingly instead of keeping on getting dragged along. And guess what? The emperor has no clothes. And that's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing to be able to see and to know, because then we can change it. So I'm going to ask the band to come and help me to prepare for prayer, because we're going to sing into our prayer. But I'm going to ask you, so this, could be about politics. It could be about what's going on in the outside, but it also could be like, where have you set some fear up in your life that you're unwilling to look at, that you were unwilling to be clear about, to question your assumptions and see if prayer can help shift that. So we're going to sing into our prayer.